A follower base of 151,000 on the Russian social media platform Telegram was branded a foreign agent by the Kremlin in September. Why? Because he criticized the military publicly. Putin's recent behavior shows an alarming trend, stirring up more suppression than ever before. How far will this crackdown go? And who will be next in line? In April, the leader of Russia signed new legislation that broadened who could be labeled a foreign agent. The law now allows authorities to target anyone accused of involving others in gathering information that could threaten Russia's military. Could this be a trap for critical voices? What if sharing even a hint of dissent makes you vulnerable? Perhaps Alyakin fell into this new net. If he used sources within the military or shared critical opinions, he'd be caught under this expanded definition. Suddenly, everything he produces must carry a conspicuous foreign agent label. Plus, he must submit detailed financial statements, exposing earnings, sources, and possibly, the government's control over him. This heavy-handed strategy effectively ended Alyakin's blogging career overnight. But his punishment seems mild compared to others. Monchin, one of the most prominent of the Z bloggers, was even more crucial. Her following exceeds 400,000, no small number in Russia's information battlefield. In October, the Kremlin declared her a terrorist, an unprecedented move for an online figure. It suggests a clear message: anyone criticizing the military or questioning the narrative is fair game. Why target her so viciously? Perhaps because her origins tell a different story. Monchin is Ukrainian-born yet publicly supported Putin's war. She appeared at the United Nations Security Council on February 17, 2022, giving reasons why Russia's invasion was justified. She claimed Ukraine was merely a Western puppet, shelling its own territory. How long could she remain in Russia after such outspoken support? The answer is, probably not long. Then there's Koblever. Unlike Alyakin and Monchin, she's already in Putin's grip. On November 5, she was arrested by anti-extremism police. Her crime? Arguing with other pro-war bloggers and having once supported opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Her social media following is small, just 10,000, but her fierce stance on the war remained unwavering. She criticized military officials and fellow propagandists alike. How do you think Putin views supporters who criticize even within his camp? The answer is clear: no one is safe anymore. According to senior defense officials, this isn't a mistake or a miscalculation by the Kremlin. It's a deliberate crackdown. The incidents involving these bloggers mark only the beginning of a broader purge. The messages are unmistakable: align with the narrative, or face the consequences. The official warns pro-war voices to find common ground or prepare for legal annihilation. The machinery of repression is gearing up, ready to sweep away anyone questioning the regime's authority. But what do these bloggers truly symbolize? Who are they in the shadowy world of Russian war storytelling? They're not part of the mainstream media, they're independent voices, working outside official channels. Known in Russia as voyenkori. They act like guerrilla correspondents. They deliver news directly to social media amid a landscape increasingly devoid of dissent. Their messages are skewed, marked by strong anti-Western, anti-Ukrainian sentiments. Yet, despite leaning into propaganda, many offer rare inside glimpses into military realities. Their reports often reveal details hidden from state-controlled outlets. They criticize military failures, but never the war itself or Putin. Their words echo a stark truth: failures are always someone else's fault, never the leader's. Take Yuri Kotlinok, one of these bloggers, who once said, "Even cancer can be cured, but Ukrainianism never." That's the tone: incendiary, unrelenting, rooted in hatred and nationalism. With such words, it seems impossible for the Kremlin to label them as enemies. Yet, they face that very fate. Labeling as foreign agents or terrorists is part of the new reality, designed to limit their impact and silence dissent. According to the Moscow Times, they produce detailed maps, share military insights, and expose Ukraine's weaknesses, information many believe the Kremlin desperately fears. They often link to military sources and even assist in recruitment, showing just how powerful their influence is. In their own way, they've become the frontline in Russia's war discourse, an authentic voice that survives amid the silence imposed by repression. But what happens when their voice is silenced entirely? The answer is chilling, and it's just beginning to unfold. In the chaos of power struggles, a supposed ally in propaganda gets exposed. Can even a Ukrainian turncoat outlast Putin's whims? Feel the sting of betrayal as alliances crumble. Putin unleashed his brutal invasion, plummeting nations into darkness. You'd imagine Manchin as a glittering trophy for Kremlin spin, a star defender, Ukrainian lawyer turned narrative weaver, crafting tales that twisted the truth. Yet her value has rotted away, abandoned like a shattered relic. The one who abandoned her homeland now feels the bite of the tyrant's scorn, whom she once hailed as savior. Imagine Ukraine's cold embrace, after years of venomous barbs. She's doomed to lurk in shadows, evading Russia's icy grip, fearing the knock in the night. Now, enter Koblever, the third in this twisted triad. Her fate differs sharply, not smeared with mere labels, but seized by Putin's iron fist. BBC monitoring reports, arrested on November 5 by Russia's extremism hunters. It sprang from a blogger feud, where she was accused of past ties to the slain dissident, Alexei Navalny. With only 10,000 Telegram followers, yet fiercely rallying for the war, she dared critique top brass and fellow scribes. Pharisees. Putin allies through thick blood, proving loyalty in every vitriol-laced post. But the spider turns prey, and this signals broader hunts. Apty Aladanov, senior Russian defense voice, declares it no fluke. Not Kremlin blunders, accidentally crushing allies. The Economist echoes, these attacks mark the dawn of a purge, targeting Russia's so-called inner foes. He's all in on this crusade, urging Z bloggers to sync with Moscow, or face legal annihilation. Hear his thunder, the machine will escalate, leaving them all stunned, breathless. As echoes of dissent grow louder, does Putin plot to silence every voice echoing his glory? The news tightens, but what damning secret could shatter the facade next? Hold your breath, as paranoia ignites the pyre. After years of unwavering support, Russia's internal security forces are now turning their sights on the very voices that fueled its war narrative. The powerful warnings and threats are not just empty words, they signal a seismic shift within the Kremlin strategy. Now, these once untouchable advocates face the wrath of a government that no longer trusts its own puppets. Imagine a world where those who spread pro-war propaganda suddenly become enemies of the state. Moscow's top officials have issued direct threats, find common ground with the Kremlin, or face destruction. The warnings are clear, the machinery of repression is about to turn the dial up to a level that will leave everyone stunned. Something unprecedented is happening behind the scenes. Why would the authorities abandon their most loyal supporters? Why now? To understand this sudden crackdown, we must explore the role these bloggers played in Russia's war effort. Known collectively as Voyenkory, these independent reporters use social media platforms like Telegram to spread their messages. Unlike official outlets, they operate outside the confines of state-controlled news. Their content, rich with anti-Western and anti-Ukrainian sentiments, captivated millions of Russians. They provided detailed insights, maps, and even information about Russian military operations, many times revealing more than state broadcasters dared to show. Their influence was profound. Amid tight control over mainstream media, these bloggers became the primary source of information for many Russians. They criticized military mistakes, exposed failures, but never challenged Putin's core narrative. Yet, their influence was undeniable. They painted a picture of victory and resilience, fueling national pride while subtly slipping in messages that kept the war's true cost hidden. Now, suddenly, the Kremlin views them as a threat. They are labeled as foreign agents, terrorists, enemies of the state. Their voices are silenced or silenced themselves. The shift is radical, what was once celebrated is now condemned. Why such a betrayal? Is it a strategic move to tighten grip on the narrative? Or do they fear something more sinister? What caused this dramatic reversal? Whose side is the government truly on? A senior defense official warns, these actions are not isolated mistakes. They are the beginning of a broader war against internal enemies, those who dare to challenge the official version of reality. The authorities are warning all pro-war voices, adapt or disappear. The machinery of repression is cranking up to full throttle. In the shadows of this upheaval, the real story unveils itself. Behind the scenes, high-ranking officials are strategizing. Their goal? To tighten control over information, eliminate dissent, and consolidate power. The once celebrated voices advocating for the war are now targets. The question remains, who will be next? And what does this mean for the future of Russia's war effort? Their fates symbolize a larger truth. Even in a country built on suppression and control, the fight over truth is fierce and unyielding. This crackdown reveals a government that is more fragile than it appears. Can it silence the truth forever? Or will these voices find a way to survive? The answer is coming, and it's more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Imagine a world where outspoken voices on social media shape the fate of nations. These are Russia's war bloggers, independent reporters who defy the official narrative. They reveal secrets from the front lines, criticize military failures, and ignite controversy everywhere they go. But what happens when their honesty puts a target on their back? Our story begins with a glimpse into their role, what makes them so powerful, yet so vulnerable. These bloggers operate outside the mainstream media, sharing raw, unfiltered insights from the battlefield. Their words echo in the hearts of hundreds of thousands, fueling patriotism or sowing dissent. Yet, despite their influence, they walk a dangerous line. Remember a moment when the air carried the smell of burning rubber and the distant hum of battle? That's the soundscape of their reports, images of destroyed tanks, shouted commands, and the pulse of a nation divided. And just like that, their words become weapons. As we dive deeper, we encounter their most vocal critics, those labeled enemies of the state, branded foreign agents or terrorists overnight. Take Yuri Kotlinok, a prominent blogger whose fiery posts challenge the military's shortcomings. He once declared, even cancer can be cured, but Ukrainianism never. His words, dripping with hatred, paint a picture of a brutal war where fire alone can purge the supposed evil. Think about that fire, that destructive force symbolizing both his fervor and danger. Can such words truly be silenced? The Kremlin believes it can. They've already branded Kotlinok as a foreign agent. Yet, his defiance only sharpens. Exposing a deeper conflict, a battle over truth itself. The story intensifies as we meet others like Tatiana Monchin and Oksana Kobalova. Monchin, a Ukrainian-born advocate supporting Russia's cause, once warned the world during the United Nations meeting that Ukraine is merely a Western colony. Now, her outspoken support has turned toxic. The Kremlin sees her as a liability, a traitor to the cause she once championed. She's hiding in Russia, afraid of retribution, her voice silenced but her influence lingering like a ghost. Kobalova's story is even darker. Arrested in November for her pro-war stance, she had criticized military leaders and fellow propagandists. Her small following of 10,000 was dwarfed by the others, yet her resolve was no less fierce. With her in custody, a warning rings loud: the Kremlin no longer tolerates dissent, even from its most loyal supporters. Why such drastic measures now? Senior officials like defense advisor Aladino suggest a strategic shift. No longer are these bloggers useful, they threaten the narrative. Now, they're considered enemies to be eradicated. The authorities have declared war on their own champions, aiming to crush any independent voice that could undermine the official line. But who are these bloggers, truly? They are not mainstream journalists. Instead, they are scattered specialists, part-time reporters, internet activists, and patriotic enthusiasts. Their primary platform is social networks like Telegram, where they operate freely, sometimes dangerously, delivering unfiltered updates. Their content tends to favor pro-Russian views, often highlighting Ukraine's military failures while ignoring their own government's setbacks. Consider a typical post. Yuri Kotlinok once wrote, "Ukrainianism will never die, even if it's buried in fire." His words are blasphemous to those in power, embodying a fiery hatred that fuels the conflict. Such sentiments are common among the most vocal proponents, many of whom even tried to rally support for Russian troops. They share maps, detailed reports, and propaganda aligned with Kremlin interests, fighting on a digital battlefield that's just as fierce as the physical one. Why are these pro-war channels so crucial? They operate as one of the few sources of credible information about the front lines, especially after independent coverage was silenced. With deep ties to the Russian military and intelligence sources, they reveal secrets meant to stay hidden. Their links to pro-Russian separatists and the Wagner Group make their reports even more controversial. Could it be this access that made them targets? Is their bravery a threat to the Kremlin's carefully guarded facade? The answer is yes. As officials crack down on these dissenters, the chilling question remains, how long can such a precarious balance hold? And what does it say about the future of free speech amid a conflict that's more asymmetrical than ever? In the shadows of censorship, the battle for truth rages on, hidden in profiles, whispers, and the flickering screens of those daring to speak out. Will these voices be silenced forever, or will they ignite a resistance that changes everything? Only time will tell. Imagine this, beneath the surface of Russia's relentless war machine, a covert battle rages. Small, independent voices once dared to criticize the military's failures, revealing truths never meant for the public eye. These voices, armed only with social media and raw honesty, had access to secrets buried deep within military ranks. Could their words be shaping the very war Putin wants to hide? And now, suddenly, those voices are silenced, arrested, labeled enemies. What secrets did they hold that threatened the Kremlin's command? Russia's war bloggers, often called Z-bloggers, have played a crucial role in shaping public perception. Unlike mainstream outlets, they're not bound by official propaganda. Instead, they act as unsanctioned reporters, peering behind the Iron Curtain with sharp eyes and daring voices. Many provide detailed maps, insider info, and candid critiques of military failures. Their followers number in the hundreds of thousands. To the Kremlin, they were both a threat and a tool, until recently. Now, the tide has turned. New laws and ruthless crackdowns are sweeping through social media, targeting these outspoken voices. Within this chaos, three figures emerge as symbols of resistance and peril. Roman Alyakhin, with 151,000 followers on Telegram, was branded a foreign agent after criticizing the Russian military. The label forces him to plaster warnings on his content and surrender financial details, tools of control. Then there's Tatiana Monchin, a Ukrainian-born voice with 400,000 followers, who once supported Putin's invasion but now faces terrorism accusations. Her words once echoed Kremlin-approved narratives, now, they threaten to undo her. Lastly, Oksana Kobalova, a small but fiery blogger arrested for her outspoken views, even as she lambasted military leaders. These figures are just lines in a larger, terrifying story, one where Putin's regime turns on its own defenders. Why now? A top defense official named Oladanov warns of a coming purge, a sweeping crackdown aimed at anyone challenging the official story. The crackdown isn't accidental. It's calculated, a strategic move to tighten control on the narrative, silence dissent, and prevent any chance of peace talks. Behind the scenes, powerful media factions and elite backers manipulate the chaos, pushing the state's agenda while hiding in shadows. Some of these bloggers, they say, are proxies, puppets of covert interests with hidden motives. Their extremism worries Kremlin insiders, for it could sabotage negotiations and prolong the bloodshed. The stakes couldn't be higher. These bloggers are more than just voices, they're frontline warriors in a shadow war for truth, control, and survival. As Putin's regime tightens its grip, the question remains, how long can a system sustain itself when enemies rise from within? What secrets do these silenced voices hold, and what will be revealed when the dust settles? The war is not just on the battlefield, it's fought in these digital shadows, and the outcome might determine the future of peace itself. In recent months, a surprising shift has taken place inside Russia's war effort. The powerful puppeteers who once relied heavily on pro-war bloggers are now turning against them. These bloggers, once celebrated voice amplifiers, are being hunted down, silenced, and even imprisoned. But why? What could turn Putin's trusted propagandists into enemies overnight? Imagine the scene: digital warriors filling the airwaves with fiery messages, maps, and calls to support Russian troops. Their voices echoed across social media platforms, stirring national pride and shaping the narrative of victory. Yet, beneath this veneer, a dangerous game was unfolding, one where information was weaponized and minds manipulated. How did these once loyal supporters become the Kremlin's targets? The answer reveals a secret battle for control, and a startling revelation about Russia's fragile grip on truth. As the Kremlin braces for a reckoning, three influential bloggers stand at the forefront of this upheaval: Roman Alyakhin, Tatiana Monchin, and Oksana Kobalova. These figures have fueled the pro-war momentum, each with hundreds of thousands of followers and bold, unwavering support for Putin's military campaign. Alyakhin, with 151,000 followers on Telegram, found himself branded a foreign agent for criticizing the military, an act that carries grave consequences in a country where dissent is dangerous. His crime? Expressing opinions that the Kremlin deemed incompatible with its narrative. Suddenly, a simple post could transform into a sentence of silence, labels, financial scrutiny, and exile awaiting him. Monchin, even more prominent with 400,000 followers, faced an even harsher fate. In October, she was labeled a terrorist, a horrifying turning point. Her crime? Supporting Russia's military actions while cast as a traitor. Though she was born in Ukraine, her outspoken support for Putin's war made her a pawn in the Kremlin's political game. The irony? Her influence was supposed to bolster propaganda, but instead, it turned her into a target. Now, she seeks refuge within Russia's shadows, afraid that her words could be her last. Kobalova, with just 10,000 followers, is already in custody. Arrested on November 5 by anti-extremism police, her crime was supporting a movement now considered enemies of the state. She had criticized military figures publicly, even questioned leadership, an unforgivable sin in Putin's eyes. Her fate underscores the ruthlessness of the regime's crackdown. Once celebrated allies are now enemies, swept away by a wave of repression. What is driving this sudden purge? Behind the scenes, a high-ranking official, Aladino, warns that these actions are only the beginning. The crackdown signals an imminent, widespread purge of inner enemies, those who threaten to challenge the Kremlin's monopoly on information. He warns that the machinery of suppression will intensify, crushing anyone who dares uncork the truth or share divergent views. Why? Because the Kremlin fears losing control of the narrative, especially as more people demand transparency and accountability. But here's the twist: some of these bloggers have played a role far beyond propaganda. They have become vital in supporting Russian soldiers on the front lines. While official supplies come from government factories specializing in missiles and drones, much of the everyday essentials, medical supplies, communication gear, even jamming stations, are procured through donations led by these bloggers or crowdfunding campaigns. Soldiers, often desperate, raise funds to buy basic equipment, gas canisters, medical kits, and more, that the government neglects or cannot supply in time. This underground support network has been circulating since June 2022, with stories revealing how the average soldier struggles with inadequate gear. Intercepted calls and leaked transcripts expose a harsh reality: soldiers are using personal funds, crowdfunding, and community aid just to stay alive and connected. These efforts, often fueled by the very bloggers now being targeted, threaten to expose the character of Russia's war effort, a secret that the Kremlin desperately wants hidden. In a shocking twist, the regime's crackdown might stem from this very support system, an attempt to control the narrative about the war's true cost. As these bloggers uncovered the truth behind the military's shortcomings, the Kremlin saw an existential threat. The soldiers' struggles, the hidden donations, the unfiltered stories, all threatened to undermine the carefully crafted illusion of victory. Could it be that Putin's fight isn't just with Ukraine, but also with his own supporters? that his efforts to silence these outspoken bloggers are driven not merely by patriotism but by a desperate desire to keep control over the narrative, no matter the human cost? As the machinery of repression rolls forward, one thing becomes clear: the fight for truth and power in Russia is far from over, and the next chapter may decide the future of the nation itself. In the shadow of a crumbling war machine, a shocking truth emerges. Inside the chaos of Russia's battlefield, a silent battle has been raging for months, not on the front lines, but behind the screens. Imagine soldiers, desperate and starving, not with guns or armor, but with empty hands and broken spirits. The whispers are clear, supplies are scarce, and the soldiers' plight is hidden behind layers of secrecy. Yet, oppositely, a new danger is rising. Behind the patriotic mask, pro-war bloggers, known as Z-bloggers, have historically stirred public support, sharing maps, military updates, and fiery propaganda. But now, the Kremlin's gaze turns deadly. Their voices, once tolerated, are now silenced with brutal precision. The question trembles in the air: why is Putin turning on his own fiercest supporters? The stakes are high. It's not just censorship, it's a calculated purge, an attempt to control every word that fuels the fire of nationalist fervor. A seismic shift begins. One of the most prominent bloggers, with 400,000 followers, is suddenly branded a terrorist. The charge? Criticizing the military, exposing the truth about equipment shortages, and questioning the narrative. And who is next? Smaller voices, those who dared to support the soldiers with donations, are already in Putin's crosshairs. What secrets are these bloggers hiding that threaten the very foundation of Putin's idealized image of invincibility? Could their support, unofficial yet powerful, undermine the Kremlin's perfect war story? The plot thickens. Behind closed doors, authorities are grabbing key figures, seizing their online platforms, aiming to shut down the cracks in the carefully crafted facade. The entire operation hints at a deeper motive: control. The more these bloggers reveal, the less the Kremlin can spin its lies. As one official warns, a future crackdown could leave these internet warriors stunned, overwhelmed by the scale of repression. The question remains: is this the beginning of the end for the Z-bloggers' influence? Or a desperate attempt to tighten the grip on a narrative slipping away? Understanding these figures is crucial. They are not just bloggers, they are the voices of resistance, the whistleblowers in a tightly controlled information war. Operating outside official media, they've often provided more authenticity than the government's propaganda machine. Their stories are vivid, maps revealing troop movements, detailed reports of military failures, and calls for aid that pierce through the propaganda. Their words, though risky, resonate with ordinary Russians seeking the truth amid smoke and chaos. How long can they speak before the Kremlin's shadow extinguishes their voices? The scene is set. As the regime cracks down, the fight for truth intensifies. These bloggers symbolize a fragile hope, a voice of dissent in a nation silenced by fear and censorship. Will they be silenced forever, or can their courage spark a hidden rebellion? The outcome hinges on a brutal question: can truth survive the shadows of power, or will silence and suppression extinguish the last flicker of resistance? The battle isn't just for information, it's for the soul of a nation lost in the fog of war. Imagine a world where voices once believed to be above scrutiny suddenly turn against their own creators. These are Russia's pro-war bloggers, those who shaped public opinion, spreading the Kremlin's narrative across social media. For years, they've painted a picture of unity and strength. But now, a dark storm is brewing, and few are prepared for the chaos that's about to unfold. In this shadowy landscape, these bloggers have long claimed immunity. They dared criticize corruption and mismanagement, insisting it was all part of the fight for victory. Their voices echoed through Telegram and other platforms, offering glimpses of truth hidden by official silence. Yet, their criticism always carried a warning: they never crossed the line into attacking Putin himself. Until now. A strange pattern has emerged. While they lampooned internal failures, they also kept the flame of support burning for Russia's military efforts. The Kremlin seemed content, until the recent military purges. Rumors swirled at leaders, including the ousting of Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in 2024, are connected to these internal upheavals. Arrests have become routine, a sign that Putin's patience is wearing thin. Could it be that the very bloggers who once protected him are now pointing fingers at those he wants gone? Is this the beginning of a deadly game of betrayal? Think back to the famous poem, First They Came, echoing through history, each line warning us of the silent descent into tyranny. Now, that poem feels painfully relevant. Russia's bloggers are realizing they are not immune. They once believed their immunity was unbreakable. But recent reports reveal that even these outspoken supporters are falling into the Kremlin's sights. Back in September 2022, reports surfaced that some bloggers hinted Russia's war effort was failing. The public's frustration grew, especially after Ukraine's daring Operation Spiderweb, which sent drones deep into Russian territory, striking strategic bombers and exposing weaknesses. Ordinary Russians watched in confusion and anger, their hopes shattered by what seemed like inaction and incompetence. For nearly 4 years, the Kremlin tolerated these voices, useful tools to channel public dissent, to keep citizens from spilling into streets. It was safer to have critics hiding behind screens, venting their frustrations safely away from authorities' watchful eyes. These bloggers became de facto spokespeople for the discontent. But power is a fragile thing. Once the war narratives turned into appeals for donations, the Kremlin saw a threat. The analog of a growing power that might challenge the official line. Threats of rebellion, dissent, these could no longer be ignored. The response was swift. The clamps came down. Now, a new phase begins, an internal purge. The very voices that once fueled the war effort are being dismantled one by one. The line between hero and traitor has blurred. How long before the Kremlin's suspicion lands on the next prominent blogger? Will they all fall, or will some slip through the cracks, whispering truths that threaten to unravel everything? The silence that follows will be deafening. The story of these bloggers is a warning, a mirror reflecting the fragile balance of power and the peril of losing control. In a world where words once shaped nations, the true battle begins now. Who will survive the coming storm? And at what cost will the truth be buried? In the shadows of Russia's secretive demands, the fight for Ukraine morphed into a wild scramble for public support, where bloggers fueled the flames with pleas for cash. Sensing these influencers tipping the balance of power too far, Putin and his inner circle struck back hard, silencing key voices to enforce their iron grip on the narrative. Did you know that Putin's fear of losing control turned into a brutal betrayal, hunting down his own allies? Picture the heavy slam of courtroom doors echoing through Moscow's cold corridors, the sharp sting of unjust labels searing reputations like a hot brand on cattle skin. Russia's Z bloggers, once celebrated for their raw reports, now trembled under this unexpected shift, bewildered by the hand that fed them. Or more precisely, a select few high-profile influencers were singled out as warnings. Imagine the chilling whisper of politics turning deadly, stay loyal or face the anthem of oppressive walls. These online warriors scratched their heads, grappling with betrayal's bitter taste. Who orchestrated this downfall? The air thickened with distrust, scented like stale smoke from unguessed fires. Yet cradled in this chaos, Roman Alyakhin pieced together the pattern. Through the tangle of new laws, he accused the system of running amok. The Kremlin's gears had spun out of sync, he claimed, allowing outsiders to snatch influence from Putin's clenched fist. But now, with sharp arrests, power swung back like a whip's crack. Could Putin's paranoia really reshape the spread of war stories? The cascade of cracks in the facade hinted at darker motives. What if Putin's tactics did more than reclaim? Did they shatter even his staunchest backers? As dust settled on this seismic turn, Alyakhin's insight sparked a stark reality for Ukraine updates in Russia. While steeped in bias, these said writers once delivered more truthful glimpses of the battlefield than state broadcasts. Their whispers painted vivid maps of trenches, the gritty soil under boots, acrid gunpowder lingering like forgotten memories. Now, if Putin's demands prevail, they stared at a fork, persist and clash with the machine's roar, or merge into puppets, their independence crushed under the weight of enforced loyalty. This crossroads spelled doom for any trace of free voices. Either path erased nuance, turning raw reports into hollow echoes. The texture of real news, once tactile and alive, withered. What shocked most was Putin's fresh stab in the back, his grip choking the nation's pulse. Paranoia pulsed through his every move. Terrified of foes inside and out, Putin erected decoy offices across the vast land. No one knew his true lair. Buildings loomed like mirages in the icy wind. How deep ran his fear? What hidden agendas lurked behind this elaborate shell game? This revelation uncovered a twist. Perhaps the blogger's fall served as a mirror, exposing Putin's escalating madness. As we peel back these layers, one question haunts: what secrets hide in those fake rooms? The echoes of fear grow louder, promising more revelations ahead. Throughout his reign, Vladimir Putin's grip on power has grown increasingly desperate. His paranoia drives him to create elaborate decoys, fake offices scattered across Russia, designed to confuse and deceive anyone trying to track his whereabouts. This labyrinth of false headquarters symbolizes his growing distrust, fueling a web of secrecy and control. Each move he makes screams of fear of internal rebellion, external threats, and losing his throne. Imagine the silent corridors of these fake offices, empty hallways echo with distant sounds, cold walls hiding secrets, and the air thick with tension. What is he truly running from? Why does fear shape every decision? Rumors swirl that these dummy offices are part of a grand illusion meant to keep enemies and even his closest allies guessing. Could this paranoia be his undoing? Or is it just the beginning of a more dangerous game? As Putin's world becomes a maze of shadows, his grip on reality weakens. Meanwhile, the world watches, questioning, how long can a leader sustain power built on deception? What lies beneath this fortress of lies? And in the shadows, is there a plan to finally outsmart the master of illusions? The answers lie buried deep within the deceptive corridors, secret chambers that hold more than just false offices. They hide the truth about a ruler who fears everything, except perhaps, his own downfall. Imagine a network of voices rallying behind a war that many consider unjust. These are the pro-war bloggers, proponents of a conflict that has left thousands dead. Since the full-scale invasion in 2022, they've been the Kremlin's echo chamber, reporting every move of soldiers on the ground. Their voices weave the narrative the government desires, a story of heroism and justified action. For nearly 4 years, Vladimir Putin tolerated their unchecked influence, seeing them as useful tools, until suddenly, that all changed. Now, the same voices that once bolstered the regime are being silenced. Kremlin officials are turning inward, targeting those who dared speak too openly. These bloggers, often called Z bloggers for the ZS painted on Russian tanks invading Ukraine, are now in the firing line. Critics say they're revealing too much, shaking the very foundation of Putin's carefully curated story. The question is, why the sudden crackdown? And who is bearing the brunt of this political quake? Let's look at 3 individuals caught in this storm. First is Roman Alyakhin. With 151,000 followers on a major Russian social media platform, his reports once provided glimpses into the war's realities. But last September, the Kremlin labeled him a foreign agent, a badge that spells trouble. Why? Because he published a post criticizing the Russian military, risking exposure and persecution. The government's recent law expansion has made it easier to brand critics as foreign agents, anyone whose posts could be seen as undermining the military effort. Now, Alyakhin must display provocative labels on everything he shares, watch his finances closely, and live under the shadow of state surveillance. That's enough to crush even the most resilient propagandist strategy. But Alyakhin isn't alone in this peril. Next, meet Tatiana Montian. She's a forceful voice with over 400,000 followers, known for her fiery commentary supporting Putin's policies. Yet, in October, her fate took a dark turn. She was officially branded a terrorist. Her crime? Speaking frankly about Russia's military actions. Despite her pro-war stance, her Ukrainian birth and outspoken support for the Kremlin's narrative make her a prime target. The Kremlin seems determined to silence her, Perhaps to send a warning to others whispering dissent or even openly criticizing the conflict. She's now forced to hide, uncertain of her safety, as her words threaten her freedom. And then there's Oksana Kobalova. Once a staunch supporter of government policies, her outspoken criticisms cost her dearly. On November 5, she was arrested by anti-extremism police. Her crime? Engaging in heated arguments online, and allegedly supporting figures opposed to the regime. Though her following was smaller, around 10,000, the stakes are high. Even a minor critic is enough to be swept into the crackdown, especially if they challenge the narrative, even slightly. Who's orchestrating all this? A senior defense official, known as Abdi Aladino, warns that this isn't an accident. It's a calculated move. The targeted actions against Alyakin, Montian, and Kobalova mark the beginning of a broader purge. Aladino emphasizes that the Kremlin is preparing for widespread suppression, an internal purge of those they now see as enemies within their own ranks. He warns that the crackdown will intensify so much, critics will be stunned by its scale and ruthlessness. Why now? Why flip suddenly against the very voices that once served the regime? The answer lies in the shifting internal fears of the Kremlin. As the war drags on, cracks appear in its facade. These bloggers, who once acted as unofficial messengers, revealing inconvenient truths, ranging from military failures to internal dissent, are now seen as threats. Their reports reach tens of thousands, painting an emerging picture of discontent that the regime desperately wants to suppress. But their role was crucial. These creators, free from state constraints, delivered in-depth insights, maps, and reports of Ukraine's military setbacks. They often had sources deeply embedded within Russian and Ukrainian lines, even linked to covert groups like Wagner. Their voices filled a void left by controlled state media, painting a complex picture of the war behind the scenes. Yet, paradoxically, their honesty is now fueling the Kremlin's fears of losing control. One blogger, Yuri Kotlinok, once painted a bleak image of Ukraine and the war, desperate, dark, infused with hatred. His words resonate like the sound of distant thunder, an ominous warning of chaos beyond the Kremlin's grasp. With such raw, unfiltered content, how long could they remain unchecked before the regime saw them as dangerous threats? This question haunts the corridors of power. The destruction of these voices signals a powerful shift. The government's tactical silence and suppression reveal a stark truth: the regime fears losing its grip on the narrative. These bloggers, once considered allies, now threaten to leak truths that could destabilize Putin's carefully constructed story of a justified war. Their very existence exposes cracks in the Kremlin's armor, a vulnerability the authorities refuse to tolerate. So, what's next? As the crackdown deepens, more voices will fall silent. The regime's fear of losing control has transformed into paranoia. The question remains, will this purge succeed in silencing dissent, or will it only fuel further unrest? Perhaps, hidden behind the blackened tanks and sealed lips, a louder voice still whispers, ready to break free when the moment is right. Did you ever imagine a ruler so paranoid that he'd silence his own cheering squad, the voices who once shouted his praises from digital rooftops? Picture the rumble of tanks echoing through frozen fields, the acrid stench of gunpowder clinging to the air, as loyal bloggers spun tales of victory. In 2022, when Vladimir Putin unleashed his all-out invasion of Ukraine, these pro-war voices became his amplifiers, echoing every soldier's step on the bloodied ground. For 3.5 years, they wove a fabric of propaganda, hiding the war's horrors under banners of heroism. But now, terror grips the Kremlin. Putin, fearful of shadows, is crushing those very supporters. Why? Because their words have grown too sharp, too revealing. Russia's pro-war bloggers, dubbed Z-bloggers for the Z markings on invading tanks, are under siege. These aren't faceless trolls. They're names like Roman Alyokhin, perched with 151,000 followers on Telegram, once a champion of Putin's narrative. Last September, the Kremlin slapped him with that dreaded foreign agent label. Why? A single post slamming the military's blunders. Feel the chill of that ink-on-paper judgment, the weight of state eyes boring into your life. Aliokin must now plaster warnings on every shared truth, tabulate every ruble earned, as if his loyalty were currency to be hoarded. His career crumbles like frost under boots, but his hardship pales against darker fates. Yet, as whispers of persecution swell, could this branding prove the tip of a paranoid iceberg? Why would a leader discard his most ardent backers, the ones who trumpeted his war's glory? In this twisted tale, Aliokin's ordeal is just the prelude. Imagine the crackling flames of ambition extinguished by betrayal. He questioned military might, and now he's marked. But Aliokin dodges the full wrath, compared to Tatiana Montyen, whose 400,000 followers made her a titan. October brought her doom, branded a terrorist, she's hunted like prey. Hear the distant sirens wailing, the cold sweat of hiding in shadows. Her crime? Blunt talk on Russia's maneuvers. Ukrainian-born, she once rallied for Putin, painting Ukraine as a puppet colony in UN halls. Betrayed country for loyalty, now betrayed again. Would Ukraine reclaim such a turncoat? Doubtful. Montyen skulks in Russia's underbelly, freedom a fading echo. But this purge hits harder still. As Aliokin endures financial scrutiny and Montyen fades into exile, the targeting intensifies. What's the Kremlin hiding behind these arrests? Picture the metallic taste of fear, the thud of boots on concrete as truths unravel. Oksana Kobalova, once a vocal ally with 10,000 subscribers, crossed an invisible line. On November 5, anti-extremism police seized her after online feuds, accused of backing the late Alexei Navalny. Feel the iron grip of handcuffs, the stale air of interrogation rooms. A minor voice, yet her gripes against brass and Bolsheviks sparked outrage. Even ardent supporters tremble now. Is this a calculated strike, or blind rage? Montyen's terror branding paved a ruthless path for Kobalova's caged silence, but who's wielding the axe? The stench of power's decay wafts through Moscow's halls. Senior defense official Abdi Aladanov declares this no mistake, a blueprint for obliteration. Hunters of internal foes are armed, ready to crush bloggers veering from the script. Aladanov warns darkly that the machinery will accelerate, stunning all with its fury. Why this flip? Once, Putin savored their zeal. Aladanov's threats ripple outward, unveiling cracks in a once-united front. The humid air of uncertainty cloys as bloggers turn predators. Picture fistfights in digital arenas, the sharp ping of accusations flying. Aladanov dissects the shift as strategic, birthing a broader clampdown. Panic's whisper grows louder. Could the regime's fear blinded to its allies' value? In the void left by controlled media, these Z-bloggers, loose warriors called voyenkori, fed Russians unfiltered glimpses via telegram. Smell the smoke of distant battles in their vivid maps, hear the roar of engines in rebel dispatches from Wagner-linked sources. They slammed military slip-ups while idolizing Putin, blaming others for failures. Ukrainianism could only be burned away, as Yuri Kotnak proclaimed in hate-laced rants. Their edge drew crowds, but now that freedom haunts the Kremlin. As maps unraveled secrets and rants ignited unease, the regime's facade cracked under relentless war's strain. Taste the bitterness of suppressed truths, betrayals, blunders. Once allies in propaganda's dance, bloggers now sow dissent seeds. Their honesty, once celebrated, fuels Putin's dread of narratives fraying. Horrified by leaks of discontent, he erases them. Kotnak's fiery visions, echoing thunderous omens of unchecked madness, foreshadowed this betrayal. Hear the incessant pulse of deletion, feel the frostbite of isolation. Public voices silenced, yet whispers persist beneath camo veils. Will repression stifle unrest, or birth rebellion? Hidden echoes await the upheaval, ready to shatter the silence at last.